What is good, everybody out there in the Metaverse, YouTube, everywhere digital? What's happening? I am Enrico Moses, and welcome to the ESX Metacast. We have a dope guest with us today, Coleman, and I'm gonna pass it to my partner Ethan to introduce this dope guest that we have today.
What up, guys? Welcome to the Metacast. As Enrico said, we're blessed to have Mr. Coleman Trapp on with us today. Coleman is a music producer and songwriter from Los Angeles, California. He has over 15-year career in music that he's worn many hats, from mixing records to fronting a band, and he's acutely aware of how technology could improve the industry. Coleman is very interested in NFTs for their ability to shake up conceptions of intellectual property, value, and the role of the artist in general. Welcome to the ESX Show, Mr. Trapp. How you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. I'm excited to have you on. I know the boys are too.
That's awesome.
100%.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We kind of had a conversation about music and how, you've been frustrated at how music is paying its artists, and that's something that we feel like NFTs are really changing. So I would love to dive into your music career, and how you got started as an artist and how old you were, just to give the audience a little bit of background of yourself.
Cool. Well, in high school, I was a drummer in a band with some friends. And when I went to college, I didn't like school. I think if I went back to school now, I would love it. But back then, I just didn't like it. So I spent my time making beats, like learning how to produce. And this was before it was like a big thing to be a bedroom producer. So I honestly had like an idea in my head that it was going to be way easier than it was. Like at the time I was 18 and I was like, oh, I'll just get a song on the radio and make a bunch of money. And I went 10 years from that point without making a dime. The first paid gig I got in the music industry was actually doing music for a tour that toured the U.S. teaching kids about Newtonian physics. It was actually NASA that hired us. So I actually quit. I gave up on the music industry. I moved back to Colorado. I say I moved back to Colorado because I was born there. And right when I gave up and moved to Colorado, I got an email that said, hey, there's this major record label that wants to sign you. I guess they didn't know that I wasn't an artist, because at the time I was just a music producer that was like putting music on, like out for TV shows and movies and stuff. But they thought I was an artist. They offered me a big record deal, and I went on tour and like learned how to perform and sing while on tour.
It's amazing. What was that, a band? What was the band called?
Coast Modern, yeah. We actually were called Blood Dad when we got signed, but their first stipulation was like, if we're going to sign you, you have to change your name. So that was the first thing they did.
Really?
Where's the name Coast Modern from?
So that was like a total like corporate think tank thing. We had like tons of people working on it for months, and nobody could agree on anything, and Coast Modern was just the last one we threw out. It was like the final one where like, okay, let's go with that.
I was actually talking to Douglas before you jumped on about just the unique style of music that Coast Modern is, man. It's a really, really fun to listen to. It had to have been a lot of fun being in that space too.
It was, yeah. It was it was an adventure. We did 5 national tours. We sold out a headlining tour, like stuff that I wanted when I was young. And I was finally getting it. But by the time I was getting it, I was had kind of grown out of it. So it was a little bittersweet. But it was a lot of fun. But the music industry is kind of a twisted place. So it was bittersweet.
Yeah. And now inspiring a lot of artists here, we talk about this quite a bit. And I think we actually, when Rico mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast, we talked with you about the revolution that's happening with Web3 and what's available now for artists. It's powerful. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm opinionated about it. Yeah, so the music industry is new in the big scheme of things. It's 100 years old, where music is a timeless thing. And I don't think there's been a lot of innovation in the music industry just because it has created so much money. There hasn't really been a drive for innovation. And innovation is where things get shaken up, that like you could be in a bad contract, but if a new technology comes out that the contract wasn't expecting, then it's like a new frontier. But because there hasn't been a ton of innovation in the music industry, yeah, I think it's been hard for artists to get out of the race. But this does feel like a paradigm shift because it's not just NFTs that are happening right now. There's a few different technologies are all converging. AI, different patronage models like Patreon. You've got DAOs as a way of making art. Of course, NFTs, the whole Metaverse thing. And, for 100 years, it's been film, TV, and print, and that's it. And the internet just was a reiteration of those things. Like you'd get on the internet and watch TV or see it or hear something. But the idea that all these new technologies all came out at once, it's like, I don't think it's clicked for the general population how much of a gold rush this is that we're coming into.
It's like I'm feeling like it's almost what it was meant to be. Like when you say in the grand scheme of things, it's been a short period of time. It's like, yeah, like from only 100 years of it really being able to be mass produced in some way. And now like mass production's not in the controlling hands of power. It can be now individualized. Like we can have our own spirit in our own representation. It seems like it's massive. It's massive.
It is. And not only that it's only been 100 years since we've been able to mass produce music, but it's only been 100 years that even the music that we like existed, like rock and roll. Like music as we know it is like a baby on the planet. And it's like as we're moving closer to the singularity, other things have evolved very quickly. Like technology has evolved rapidly and music hasn't until now. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I think on that point, it's really important to point out how technology has been integrated with music based on the product offering, right? So if we think about the record, right, and vinyl, and that technology, and even how vinyl was sold, right? Like you had this big vinyl record, you had this really big piece of artwork, and that was the package, right? That concept of this large artwork, and that's how people were even buying records, right? And from there, we went to the A track, we went to the cassette, and then we went to the CD, right? And each one of those technologies actually really shaped the music industry in different ways, right? When CDs came, everybody had to repurchase all of their favorite music again. And the music industry had a huge windfall of profits, right? And that kind of comes up against the next evolution, which was Napster. So I'm really curious of your thoughts on how things have evolved since that CD era into Napster and then where we are now with everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great observation. The thing is, it was like back in the album phase, it was like, okay, this artist is going to be big. Are they going to be like 100,000 records big? Are they going to be like 10,000 records? People had to like predict those things because you actually had to print the record and have it at the record store. You don't want 50,000 people to go out to buy a record and there only be 1,000 on the shelf. So there was a whole industry around supply chain manufacturing, and then who's going to front the money for all this? And then there's the record advance. So basically we're in an industry where you're taking all of that out of the equation and then trying to keep the ship afloat. It doesn't make sense. Napster, I loved Napster. I always told people that the 10 years that I didn't make music, the 10 years that I didn't make money in the music industry was a karmic debt for stealing like every album known to man. We actually have a song about pirating music. It's like, why have I not made money from music? Well, because it's like that FBI thing. Would you steal a car? I'm like, maybe at that age I probably would have. They're like, pirating's bad. I'm like, they're making the Sims so cool. It's like Dare. Yeah. So I think like the whole big thing about smart contracts is trustless. That's kind of what's happening with intellectual property now. Like, it makes it where the idea of a new song, it's like, here's what the record execs understood in the 60s. Like when Man, he's one of my favorite artists, and I'm spacing his name now, but the Purple Haze guy.
Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix, yeah, when he was tearing it up on stage, that was an electrifying, powerful experience. He was changing history. He didn't need to get paid. All the things he would have spent the money on were being thrown at him, and record executives were seeing this, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we have to monetize this." Traditionally, artists didn't care about monetizing things because the world was unlocking for them because of their art. And so with NFTs, there's all these jokes about people like copy saving them, and like it doesn't make any sense, because at the end of the day, the real power of art is in the information. And if I had like a hit song, like, this isn't a popular idea, but if I had a hit song, I don't care if people are bootlegging it, because you're actually the product if you're listening to my song. They say if something's for free, then you're the product. So yeah, like attention is the most valuable thing on the planet. It's not money. Does that connect to what you're asking?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I think it's really interesting thinking about how artists have moved more towards this concept of becoming a business, monetizing their art. I think that, I mean, for somebody like Michael Jackson, right? Like I think about Kanye West and how he has the Yeezy line. Like imagine if Michael Jackson had a fashion line that was like anything serious, you know, and the level of fame, notoriety that he had. It's like we're in such a different era. And I also think that hip hop has really ushered that in a major way of like artists used to be against selling out. If you think about it, right? And now you have artists like Travis Scott doing McDonald's commercials, Kanye. I mean, it's basically like if you don't get to the bag, people won't respect you now, right? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how that's evolved, and why that might have evolved that way.
Yeah, Dave Chappelle put it well. He was talking about all the offers he got to keep doing his TV show on Comedy Central, and he compared it to this like hunting tactic that they have in the Sahara, where they'll be able to trap the hunters will be able to trap a baboon, because the baboon puts his hand inside of an anthill hole and can't pull it out because he wants the ants that are in the hole. And he was comparing that to the money trap. He was like, they were trying to get him to stick his hand in the hole and grab the money and then be trapped there. Yeah, it is a trap. I like, because Travis Scott he's got all the talent. Like he doesn't need the trappings of he doesn't need it in advance, you know, like he doesn't need that. He could go out in the world and get whatever he wants because he has social power. So I feel like it's been a trick. I mean, I'm like, all the conspiracy theories that I dwell on these days are like positive ones, like everything working in my favor. But I mean, yeah, money is it's a tricky thing.
One of the things that I kind of think about, you know, taking it back to when you said that the real value is the information, and it's the fact that somebody's watching, and I feel like that bottleneck is what these labels and these companies have control over, is the access to the people. It's like if you were just an artist, like you were saying, you were kind of one of the first, you know, bedroom producers, and it's like at that point your access to hundreds of thousands of people was limited. But these, you know, labels could come in and they could say, hey, we have these people, we have these distribution networks, we'll cut you this deal to give you this, but obviously you can't do it without us, quote unquote. So here's, you know, a terrible deal. And I feel like now with Napster and with YouTube and these technologies, that access is just about the value of the content now. It's no longer about, can you get to the people? It's, hey, are the people going to care? And so I'm curious how that kind of change has affected you, and if you've had a personal experience, being that, you know, your songs have hundreds of millions of views on YouTube, but you're saying that during that time you weren't making much money. So now you have this access, you have the attention. You know, what's that kind of doing for your career now?
Yeah, I mean, it's humbling, because I know that we're at a time in history where the world needs good art. And when I say good art, I don't mean like aesthetically good. I mean like good, like the cure of cancer. Like, can that be an art piece? Like, can we treat our innovators like artists? I read a book about Da Vinci that blew my mind, Walter Isaacson's book, and yeah, I realized that his art was so good because it wasn't his main focus. His main focus was to observe nature, and because he observed nature so well, he made great art. And so that's where I see where I'm at right now. I'm trying to be aware and keep my eyes wide open and look to the horizon, and kind of, because chaos is a shape-shifting beast, and as an artist, I want to be able to identify that beast and tell my community about it before it's too late. And that's good art. Like, that's why people like movies or like rock and roll. It's like you bring the fire without people having to go into the fire. So it's exciting.
I love that. There's this concept that I want to bounce off of you that I think Kanye was talking about, and it relates to where we're headed in the NFT space and the Web3 space. And essentially what it is around the concept of an IPO for an artist, right? So he was talking about some of these artists are very popular, they're very successful, right? Let's go back to the example of Travis Scott. And what Kanye was saying is how these artists should have a CEO, and they should be able to IPO and have people invest in this artist. What do you feel about that?
I mean, it's genius. It's true too, because it's true. I don't know what else to say. It's smart.
Yeah, I love that. What that makes me think of is one of my friends and I were having a debate around Jay-Z versus Drake, right? And like, how do you compare Jay-Z and Drake? And what he said really blew me away, and I just laughed so hard. He said, I don't compare those two because I look at Drake like Team Drake. And it is like, his construction of an artist is like so constructed, right? In comparison to like someone like Jay-Z, who came from this era, who was himself. He had to kind of fight his own battles. So I think we're moving into that space, but it's kind of like, it's almost hidden. I think a lot of people don't know how Drake has so many people behind him, creating that whole curation of the image that we see now.
Mm-hmm. What was the word you used? Did you say Team Drake?
Yeah, Team Drake.
Oh, right. Oh yeah, and he acknowledges that, like, for sure. Yeah, teams. I mean, there are teams behind all these artists. I don't know Jay-Z personally enough to know if he has a team around him that's just hidden, but I mean, I just was seeing a video of Prince when he was like 11 today, and he was already like ripping it up on the keys as a little kid. So it's not that Jay-Z needs a team, but I think part of Drake's image is his team, for sure. Like, and Jay-Z definitely has like this whole like vanguard, like no one in the world like me vibe, which is super cool. Something popped in my head about what you were saying earlier about the IPOs. I mean, no artist would ever sign another artist advance if they could do an IPO or like some overnight NFT sale. Because like when you're doing artist advance, it's really just a horrible interest deal. Like it's just really high interest on a loan. Yeah, and then you have to wait like years to get it back because the system that collects the money moves so slow. So if I told you, do you want to go through that process, or do you want to literally overnight see the funds in your account? Nobody would ever say no to that.
Yeah, it's awesome, brother. It's you said something earlier that just kind of been sitting in my head for a little bit, that was like the world needs art and like the information in it, and like with what we're stepping into and all of what we're talking about with giving this power to the artists, I'm curious like what you envision will be the most serving aspects of the art that's about to go on blast for the world with Web3. Like, how's that going to hit for the world in the future?
It's a good question, man. That's a good question. I'm split between two worlds where there's an answer I could give you that people aren't ready for yet. There's a future that I'm well aware of that will blow people's minds. But put in a nutshell, it's that when we talk about things like the metaverse, we imagine having to build it, but there's technology on the horizon where we'll be able to generate metaverse experiences from equations, like they call it generative. Give me a second. It's called. Well, a simple example of it is like Minecraft. You put a seed into the game, and it builds an entire world. So, I don't know if you guys know about Deep AI. It's a company. They just came out with this new thing. The news came out just a couple days ago, where you can type in any phrase. Like some of the ones they had on display were like astronauts eating ice cream, painted in the style of Andy Warhol, and you're just typing it, and it gives you photorealistic expressions of this stuff, and just as many iterations as you want. It's mind blowing. So. Yeah, it's going to be something where you could be like, okay, what would Da Vinci make in the year 2050? Like, you could ask the computer that, and it could spit it out. But then you're in a 3D world where these things are manifesting on the walls. And even just for music, like when people think about NFTs, we're still very much in like an Internet 2.0 state of mind, where we're thinking of like two-dimensional images or linear songs. But the idea of a song like changing every time you listen to it, or being able to hear what it would have sound like if Jimi Hendrix had done the guitar solo, or things where like I could, or another side that's different than that is like merch for artists. Like I could sell a postmodern boombox that's a 3D object in the metaverse that like plays one song. So I'm not just selling a 2D GIF, it's like an actual 3D boombox in the metaverse, and you hit play and it plays a song, and the boombox is like themed around the song. Like it's like, that's the thing with a paradigm shift. It's like we're so used to genre shift. Like that's what we know, it's like 10 years a new genre comes, 10 years a new genre comes. But what we're stepping into is a paradigm shift where it's like everything we know squared. So it's exciting.
One of the things that kind of brings up for me is like the idea that, and I don't necessarily share the same thought, but I know that there's a lot of people who do, like AI generated music doesn't have the soul of the musician. And like this idea that like there's something lost when you try to generate music rather than having it being played by a living, breathing person. What are your thoughts on that? And I think that kind of also relates a little bit into, I guess, spirituality and what you see as like the conscious effort creating the music. I just want to kind of dive into that and see what you think.
So, yeah, this is embarrassing, but the AC just kicked on, and I couldn't hear the last like 10 seconds of that question. So I'm going to turn the TV off and come right back.
No worries.
Yeah, you're good. No, it is crazy to think about all that stuff, though. Just like when he was saying that, I was thinking about like the experience overall in the metaverse and how like our senses are going to just be tapped in. It's crazy to think about.
Facts. Well, it's interesting because it's also like, I guess here's the question: is the farmer who plants the seed of the tree, can they take creative credit for the tree? Does it matter? It's like
it's like the world, the universe takes credit for it, or like the tree is like it birthed itself, but they influenced it. I guess it's like the musician influenced the music to come, but the music was generated by science and reality and the universe or whatever.
Yeah, it's generated by harmony and pattern, right? It's like the algorithm is just a way to create a unified harmony and pattern that can replicate itself. So who is responsible? Is it the person who wrote the algorithm? Is it the algorithm itself?
So my initial thought when you were asking that question, I think when AI fully comes in, we'll realize that we don't know what intelligence is, or that there's no such thing as artificial intelligence, that all intelligence is intelligence. Because the way I look at it, Jimi Hendrix came out of the same mud that these algorithms came out of. Like if you look at evolution, it's like a mathematical process over time. It's like selecting, but it's selecting under certain rules. And we evolved to create computers. So they're like an evolution of the same process. It's like, how can we say that we came out of the mud, but computers didn't? And I've already heard some AI stuff that was like eerie, like somebody generated like what Smells Like Teen Spirit would sound like. I don't know if you've seen that. It's called like AI radio or something like that. But they'll play like 1 minute of a song and then AI will kick in, and it was like hair raising because I'm like, this sounds like Nirvana from another dimension. Yeah, because
Wow.
like science doesn't know what consciousness is at all or what intelligence is. I think we're about to be surprised.
100%. And so this actually, I love that response. It kind of segues right into a song that I want to ask you about on your album, on Going Mainstream, Sunshine Time. So when I was listening to that song, I loved it, by the way, amazing song. During the hook, or during like the chorus of the hook, you bring in this crazy deep kind of like synth that like is like a vocal synth, and it like invokes like the shadow. It like invoked a lot of fear. And then I started listening to the lyrics, and the lyrics are very much entwined with that. And the last part of the song, when you say, and it kind of relates to, I feel like what you're saying is, I'm just going to read some lyrics and I want to get your thoughts on what inspired them. What happens when you close them? Same shit when they're open, same shit when you're sleeping. Everything is even. Tell it's all, you know you're God, except you forgot. You got kicked out of the club because you were goofing off. So I love that, dude. I think that's amazing. And I just want to, like, does that relate to your idea of this? We all came from the mud. We're all the same. We're all part of this big, same unity.
You're asking if that lyric connects to that idea?
Yeah, that's what I kind of draw from it, especially listening to you now.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that song. I love that album. I don't connect to everything I put on that album or all the lyrics, but I can say that I really do believe in like the oneness of the universe. I think that a lot of people think of infinity as like the ultimate, like God being infinite is like the ultimate expression of God, but to the ancient mind, like the Greek philosophers that Western civilization came from, it was the idea of oneness or the finiteness of God that was blowing their minds, and I really connect to that. So yeah, everything is even till it's odd. Was kind of, I mean, that's that album just came out, but most of those songs are from like 4 years ago, and I was I think I like to retroactively put meaning onto stuff, but at the time I'm usually just vibing out. Yeah, like on our first album we have a song called Hollow Life, which is about like the hardship of the industry, but at that point I wasn't even in the industry. I was totally like making I was just having fun. I was like, what would an angsty sound song like? And then all of a sudden, like I'm like living it. On that second album, there's even a song called The Business of Death, and it's saying like, oh, sickness is coming, the feds, cover your mouth, stay inside. It sounds like a song about COVID, but we wrote it like 2 years before COVID happened. So, yeah. I can't say that when I wrote that lyric, I to be honest, Sunshine Time, I freestyled that song. I wrote all the lyrics in one take.
That's awesome.
Dang.
It's really dope. Question, so Endless Sounds experience is really all about exploring the future of NFTs, Web3, and music. So I'm curious, from where you stand as an artist, as someone who's really passionate about technology, where do you think this might be headed? Maybe there's some ideas that you've been thinking of how artists can utilize this technology. I'm curious on your take on all of this.
Yeah, I have some ideas. 2 years ago when I first heard about NFTs and was getting into it, I actually, like the word non-fungible has an anagram, which is bingo funnel. And I like bought up all the bingo funnel stuff. I was like, I got the Twitter and got the website because I was going to go all in on NFTs. And I still think I will. I guess I wanted to see the space mature a little bit more. But one of the first things I got excited about was having songs change from off-chain data, like having a guitar get more distorted depending on how hot the temperature is in Dubai, using something like Chainlink to do that. When I started to develop these things, I was kind of let down by some things I had assumed about NFTs. Like I really thought that the NFTs were on the blockchain, and then when I learned about like the interplanetary filing system and stuff, I I was like, I want to wait a little bit till like we're actually trading this information on the blockchain, like in its fullness. And like with some of the layer 0 stuff, I think, or just there's technology I'm seeing where that could be closer on the horizon. I also think short audio clips, like much shorter bits of data, like people will start to create songs that are like 15 or 20 seconds long. That's at least something I've been thinking about. And then like collectors could like string songs together really quickly, so you're not having to like wait. Like if you wanted to listen to someone's library, you wouldn't have to like be sitting there listening for 50 minutes. You could just hit play, and then all these like little audio nuggets would play like one after the other. I call this nuggies.
I like that.
Yeah, there's another thing, and all this stuff, the technology's already here. Like if you wanted to have an algorithm create a different drum fill every time it went into the chorus, you could do that. So that's things like that I'm super excited about.
Oh man, I love all of that. I think that this interview gives us a lot to think about, you know, where your head's at, where the space is potentially going. You know, I really want to thank Box and Ethan for being a part of this. Coleman, I really want to thank you for being a part of this and sharing your knowledge. Big shout out to everybody tuning in. We are going to continue with these live streams in the Metaverse. So make sure that you continue to show up in the Metaverse live and check out all these videos on YouTube. Yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Coleman, and for your farewell. Anything you want to say to the people?
Man, I love this space. I'm excited for you guys. I think this is super cool, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Hell yeah.
We appreciate you hopping on, my man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Until next time, y'all. Peace and love.